Hey there! Welcome back to our lecture series on Vertex Operator Algebras. In this, the 14th episode, we'll start a new series to investigate a special class of Lie algebras, the so-called Heisenberg algebras. The name, of course, stems from the canonical commutation relations discovered by Werner Heisenberg in his original formulation of quantum mechanics. To motivate these constructions, we start with a lightning review of the relevant operator algebras in quantum mechanics. In quantum mechanics, a curious thing happens to the symplectically dual phase space variables like position and momentum, often denoted x and p. The quantum theory promotes these variables to self-adjoint operators on a complex vector space of physical states, which affords a natural way to consider non-vanishing commutators of things like x and p. In the Schrödinger picture, vectors take the form of a wave function psi of x. The operator x hat simply yields the eigenvalue x, the position. The operator p hat acts as a derivative. Their commutator yields a constant eigenvalue. There is, of course, a dual description in terms of the canonically conjugate variable p using the appropriate Fourier transform. A simple, useful, and technically relevant example for us will be the quantum harmonic oscillator. The energy operator, which classically defines the canonical variables and their associated orbits in phase space, is simply a quadratic function of the pair x and p. The orbits in this phase space, the physical states, are then nested circles whose radius is determined by the energy. Generically, the physical states are nested ellipses, with the ratio of axes lengths being scaled by a choice of coordinate scaling, which could be related to some physical parameters like the oscillator frequency or the object's mass. Because of this simple structure, it is often useful to complex rotate to the non-Hermitian operators, A and A dagger. For an appropriate scaling, which can also be used to absorb the aforementioned physical parameters, the canonical commutation relations can be reframed as A with A dagger equals 1, which removes that pesky factor of I. It also has the physical interpretation of a ladder operator, which moves you up and down in the space of states. This construction is ubiquitous in physics because the harmonic oscillator is the prototypical linearization of almost any force. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this so-called Fock-space representation of the harmonic oscillator is probably more familiar and relevant to the representation theory of Lie algebras. Now, on to Heisenberg algebras. A Lie algebra H is said to be a Heisenberg algebra if the center of H is also the commutator subalgebra, and if that center has dimension 1. As it turns out, these two requirements are very restrictive. We will be considering Z-graded Heisenberg algebras, and we'll choose by convention to have the center be the subspace of degree 0. Okay, so let's fill this out a bit. Suppose A, B, and C are elements of H. So any double bracket of the form A with B with C vanishes by construction. Note that this implies that any non-vanishing bracket A with B is always in H0. Put differently, the domain of non-vanishing brackets can be modeled as the direct sum of H sub n plus H sub minus n for any integer n. Now, from these considerations, we see that the Heisenberg algebra H is reducible into three subspaces, H plus, H0, and H minus, where H plus or minus are the direct sums over the relevant graded subspaces of positive or negative degrees, respectively. Because the commutator subalgebra draws from subspaces of Hn plus H sub minus n, we see that H plus and H minus are both abelian. So given this abelian decomposition for H, we now build a useful basis for each. Fix Z in H0, AI in H plus, and BI in H minus. We then write out the relevant bracket structure in terms of Z, A, and B. These are clear analogs to the canonical commutation relations of quantum mechanics. One note here is that we fudged a bit and ended up defining the basis vectors so that these brackets take this clear form. FLM framed this by introducing an additional bilinear antisymmetric form, but that felt a bit contrived and potentially confusing, so we skipped it. Note also that for non-vanishing pairs, AI and BI, The graded structure of H suggests that the degree of AI plus the degree of BI must vanish. I hope you've had your fill, but that's all for today. Next time, we'll investigate modules for these Heisenberg algebras.